Coming up, are you living the calling of your life? How do you know that? We're going to talk about things that you can do to determine if you're on the right path. Stay tuned. Okay, we're rolling. We're rolling. Fishbowl is rolling. You know, you never know when you're going to learn life lessons. I am floored. Now that I'm older, obviously I've had more life lessons that I'm floored by. But, and you never know where it's going to come from. A guy by the name of Jay Abraham I'm about to talk about his perspective on the way you should look at life. In particular, your work life versus your personal life. And he said, in his opinion, the ideal situation would be to create your work life around the personal life that you want to lead. Think about that for a moment. And, there's a part of before I move forward, there's a part of my business that I do is personal development. So many things cross over into this stuff, like my bodybuilding that I do. The building blocks of bodybuilding are so important as far as the kind of life that you end up leading, and it just impacts you it's impacted me in a certain way. And I'm getting to a point here eventually. But Jay said that. He said, create a work life around the personal life that you want to live. And the thing about that is that that's really a hard thing to do when you think about it, because it might force you to do something that is not considered a practical job. So many people make those choices, when you're younger, and you go through different phases in your life. There's no question about that. But it's like, the job that you're getting into, did you do it because it was something that was your calling? Because that's really the crux of what we're talking about here. What is your calling in life? Are you living what you think is your calling in life? I would say that most people aren't, for the reasons I just started talking about, because people make choices based on practicality. For example, the industry and the business that I got into, being a personal trainer, especially back in the days when I started this thing, it was probably the least practical job that I could get myself into. But what Jay said was telling back in those days, because I took it to heart. I really thought about that, and I implemented that. When I was, you have to go back to really find out what your calling in life maybe should be, because I think there are hints when you're younger. Like, for example, with me, I look back and I can remember as young as 8 years of age, for example. One of the things that I immediately connected with, that I was obsessed with, were sports. All I could do is live and breathe and think about sports. So that's what my calling in life ended up being. I wanted to be a professional athlete. Now, a lot of times it just doesn't work out the way you think it's going to. But I look back and I'm thinking, okay, what was I obsessed about? What were these things that I just wanted to do day in and day out? Well, it's sports to some degree. And when Jay, fast forward a bunch of years, because I tried doing different things in my life that I was never happy at. But when I heard that, when Jay said that, that really just turned everything upside down. And I started thinking, okay, reassess. You got to keep asking why at different points in your life to see if you're doing what you were called to do. And I thought, well, I didn't make it as an athlete. So now what? Well, here I am. Now I've been doing my bodybuilding. I've been doing my personal training every single day since the day that I made that choice. But you got to scare the hell out of yourself and be willing to do that, because it's scary when you are doing something that's not a normal or a practical type of job, where you're going out and you're creating your own path. It's a beautiful thing when it happens to work. But I got to tell you something. The fact that I did that, it taught me how to trust. It's like the primal voice inside you. Sometimes we just get that voice beaten out of us. Could be from our parents, because they have their ideas about what they think you should do. Sometimes parents, teachers, friends. When you go out and you're a pioneer and you do your own thing, make sure that you have that voice that's loud and clear. There's no question that there's a voice. I find myself doing things at times, first of all, one of the things I learned to tap into that voice was going to my gym, for example. And there are different ways that you can do this. And most of the people will call this meditation. And I guess that's what I'm going to call that. Because I'm at my gym in the morning, for example, like really early before anybody else. I'm up at like 3 o'clock, that kind of early. And I just go down to my gym. I mean, I don't have to be there on the weekends. I don't. And yet I go there, unless I'm out of town doing something with the family, mind you. But if I'm in town, I'm always at that gym. There's no other place that I'd rather be than at that gym, my gym. It's one of those things that, of course I keep asking, well, why is that the case? Why am I willing to go there? I mean, there's times I have nothing really to do on my plate, but I got to go to that place. It's my home away from home. So if I'm self-analyzing, I know that I'm somewhere where I feel safe. Now, when you are somewhere where you feel safe, it only makes sense that you're relaxed and it gives you the opportunity to let your mind wander. And I think it's really important for that to happen. And that's what I do. I let my mind, I don't try to think about anything, and because I do this over probably a good hour. And I'm not saying that hour is necessary to do that. It's just I'm sharing with you what the paces that I go through on a daily basis, because I do this in my gym every morning before I get started. But it gives me an opportunity to just let ideas flow. Our mind is an untapped resource of information. Just when you think that you have nothing to think about or talk about, or when you're in a creative mode, sometimes when you're a creative type person, you hit like a creative, they call it a writer's block. And that's scary for those people that are in an industry where they need to be creative or they want to be creative, because it happened to me. So I know what it feels like. And it's kind of scary because all of a sudden you think, okay, is that it? I was writing a book when it happened with me. 3 strokes in 3 weeks that saved my life. It's like all of a sudden one day, it's like it came to a screeching halt. But the truth of the matter is, what made it worse was when I panicked about that. And sometimes that's what happens when stuff's not going quite right, or you're being challenged in life, because you know what? We're constantly being challenged. And if you're not being challenged, my recommendation is to challenge yourself. Create a situation to where you are being challenged. Take yourself to task to some degree, because too many people don't. And consequently, what happens, I think it was a book that was written a long time ago. It's called From Good to Great, or good gets in the way of doing great things. It's good enough, in other words. That's what happens to a lot of people. Is that okay for some people? Yeah, sure it is. But for those people that want to achieve great things, you'll find some common things. They're, number one, they are living their calling, what they're supposed to be doing. I still remember the time with my kids when they graduated college. And now this is after years of me going through and living that, where I went on my own path that was scary, and somehow it just worked out. It wasn't all by accident, by the way, because you have to have the mindset that there's no way that you're going to fail. And you're going to fail a lot, but there's no way that you're going to absolutely fail. You refuse. I refuse. And that's the way I've always lived it. That's why I'm not afraid to get into things that are really challenging, because I know I'm going to, at some point, after all the failure, I will come out on top. But I told my kids on the field there, they graduated in a stadium there, college. I said, if I could tell you one thing, based on my firsthand experience, which is the most powerful and the most useful at the end of the day, I said, if you're not sure what you want to do, because when you're 21 years old, just out of college, not everybody has they know, for example, 100% what they want to do in life, because oftentimes it's going to change. But in that moment, to keep it really simple, I kind of said to them like Jay said to me. And I said, do what matters most to you. That's it. Do what matters most. Do what you love doing. Do something that you would do for free. Even if you weren't getting paid for it, you still do it. I think those are really important sort of markers to give you an idea where you should be in your life. And like I said, I mean, I didn't start out doing my calling in life. I started out coming back to a dairy business because that's where I was supposed to be. I was expected to be there. In my culture, it was supposed to be left to me, the next generation. And I gave it a go. But fortunately, I learned early on that I knew that it wasn't for me. It was causing too much pain and sadness in my life. And the only way that I could get through that time, because I thought I squandered something, I gave up on athletics a little bit. I mean, I had a major injury, but I used the injury to let myself off the hook. And how many of us, maybe it's not an injury, but how many times have we used something which is really more of an excuse than a legitimate reason why we don't move forward? Maybe the underlying reason is that you don't move forward because it's either too much work or you're scared out of your brains that you might fail. And then what? Because I think that's what really goes on. But I was in so much pain because we, as human beings, we kind of are proactive when we're in a hell of a lot of pain or we're experiencing a hell of a lot of pleasure. I think that area in between is deadly because you become, well, you're not moving one way or the other. You're just there. You're there sort of just sleepwalking through life. Life is living you. But you haven't experienced enough pain to take that next step. I was in so much pain at this point in my life. And all I could do to somehow be able to move forward. I mean, I was really, really unhappy. It's brutal. I just told myself, I said, I'm just going to make a promise to myself. And I have to keep this promise. That's before we make promises to ourselves, make sure you're going to keep the damn promise. You got to hold yourself accountable. And I think we all know to a certain degree that, holding yourself accountable is brutal because, it might not be exactly what you want to see or what you want to go through. But I made a promise to myself 27 years of age, worst shape of my life, which was awful because I was an athlete since age 8. And it's all I wanted to do, as I mentioned at the top. I made myself a promise. And I said, if I ever get a chance to do what turns me on, what gives me that passion, that buzz in the belly, that fire, I'm not going to question that. And that got me at least to a spot where I wasn't just constantly unhappy. That does some bad things to you. When you're unhappy at the core, no one around you is safe. You'll take it out on them. Maybe you won't even know that you're doing it, but you will. So that gave me the opportunity to take maybe just like a pause, if you will, a respite a little bit from that constant beating myself up. I didn't follow through on I wanted to be a pro athlete, and here I am on the dairy. I mean, there's some harsh things that starts happening to you mentally. But that gave me an opportunity. I had to be proactive. I had to do something for myself to take a step in that right direction. We talked about that sometimes in our personal development course. It's like you have to first create a daily habit. Anything. What I learned from physiology was that it takes 21 days for your body, your physiology to start adapting to that habit that you do every single day. Again, it's simple stuff like that. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to develop some kind of a habit for 21 days. So I did that. And my habit was to go and start working out in the gym. It was a big departure from what I was used to because I never did work out in the gym. As an athlete, back in those days, believe it or not, they didn't want us, especially if you were in a specialty position like I was in, quarterback. They didn't want you in the gym. They didn't understand the benefit, how important weight training was. They really didn't understand it. And to some degree, it was better in some cases for them not to, with athletes, because what we learned is if you didn't know how to do a certain type of training based on the athlete, you could actually screw the athlete up. You could make him worse on the field than better. And that's not the idea. But anyway, I started a weight training program. It was foreign to me. I didn't know if I was going to like it, but it didn't matter because I kept thinking, I made a promise to myself to do this daily ritual. People, make promises to yourself and keep your own promise. Stop looking for reasons why you shouldn't be doing whatever you're doing. I would say that there are very few reasons why. Normally, they're excuses. And you let yourself off the hook. Don't do that anymore. Stop it right now. Go do a daily habit. And then what you'll find over time is that it becomes a ritual. Now, what I didn't know what was going to happen. Hey, we sometimes surprises are really a good one. When I all of a sudden did this daily habit and I started looking better and feeling better about myself, it's like it started changing my mentality. Because that's kind of where it starts. You know, your mind is your command center. It's control. Everything else follows behind that. As overwhelming and as a dark, deep spot that I was in, it was hard to see any daylight. But you know what? I gave myself that chance. I held myself accountable. And all of a sudden, I was like, wait a minute. I'm starting to feel some stuff here that I haven't felt in years. It was that buzz. I recognized that. I didn't know that it was that in the beginning because it caught me off guard. Because that buzz in the belly started coming to me in the form of weight training, which I had no knowledge of except for at that particular moment. And then one thing leads to the other. I go and I join a gym. And the next thing I know, the instructor that was there said I should compete. And that was when my life changed forever. I didn't become a professional athlete, but the area that I'm in with bodybuilding, weight training, and nutrition, and again, I mentioned to you, they're the building blocks for everything that you do. Diet and exercise will impact every one of us, or the lack of diet and exercise will impact every one of us at some point. And when I started understanding that, I was back, baby. I was back in. I was in that moment, just like I was when I was a youngster, 8 years old. All I could do was think about, live and breathe. It was hard for me to sleep. And to some degree, it's still like that for me today. What a beautiful thing to be able to look forward to that every single day. I mean, especially as you start getting to the age that I am. To feel and to look better than you should, based on, and I look back at people that are younger than me. I look back like when my dad was in his 60s. I'm in a whole different spot than I was than my dad, for example. I'm living the calling of what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm using my body as a vehicle to prove to myself that what your body and mind is capable of. My mind seems extremely young because I'm exhilarated all the time. I'm looking forward to tomorrow before it's even over. My body is showing me that I still got a little bit left in the basement, as Sylvester Stallone said in one of the Rocky movies. I still got a little left. I got a lot left in the basement, to be honest with you. And here's something that I also learned. I think some people sometimes, when they're not doing what their calling is, they're always looking for a shiny object. I was that person at some point. I will admit that. But it's my wife sometimes tells me, "Well, you're boring." I live my life like a monk to some degree. It's not flashy. I used to love to travel and do more things than I'm doing now. Now, maybe some of it has to do with my age. Okay, maybe. I kind of doubt it. What the difference is that I don't need stuff. I don't need shiny objects to make me happy. I don't need to go on vacations into Europe. I've done all that. And I'm not saying that that's not cool, but the difference and the nuance there is that it's kind of like the difference maybe between living to eat and eating to live. People that live to eat, they just can't wait for the next meal, and most of them shouldn't have that next meal. I don't need that stuff. And I've told the people that are around me, that doesn't make me happy now. So I think what's important is that you have to make yourself happy first before you can truly make anybody else around you happy. Because at the end of the day, if you're not really truly at peace and happy, that doesn't mean that you're not dealing with luck. I have a busy ass work schedule that I choose to do. Like I told you at the top of this show, I challenge myself on a regular basis. That's part of who I am. That's part of what I know that I need. That's what makes me happy. To be challenged, to take myself to task on a daily basis. Yeah, hey, look, I push it sometimes to where it's like, okay, I took too big a bite. That's fine. No one said that you were going to do something perfect all the time. I'd rather make that mistake as long as it doesn't kill me. Because if you do something that is chronically stressing you out, for example, at some point you're going to shut down. You have to. So it's a dance. But man, the game changer is doing the stuff that you're called to do. It doesn't matter, people, what it is. It just doesn't matter. I'm speaking from firsthand experience because I didn't want to consider the fact how I was going to make it in personal training back in the days when no one was doing it in my town. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. That's hard to wrap your head around. What do you mean it doesn't matter? I'll figure it out. I'm a problem solver, and I'll use that time in the gym. I'll use those, when I'm meditating, that's where I do my problem solving. I'll solve the problem. I'll figure out a way. You won't think like that unless you're doing something that is your calling. I promise you that. And when you trust your intuition and you hear that primal voice loud and clear, make no mistake, that's a real voice talking to you. That's a real voice. When you start trusting that, and you look back and you think, you know what? It wasn't the way this where I'm at right now and how things ended up working out. Didn't work out like I thought it was going to, but guess what? It did work out. The game changer, I'll say this over and over again. Have passion. Be enthusiastic. You always want to keep learning. I'm still learning all the time. Do something that you would do for free. And if you're lucky enough to get paid for it, double bonus. All right. Hopefully what I've given to you now are at least a life lesson. Do something with that. So many of us listen to podcasts and we listen to motivational tapes, but we really never do anything with that. We get all hyped up and then it wears off. And then all of a sudden the reality of your life as you know it, all of a sudden sets in and it becomes that obstacle. The obstacle is the way. Look for something hard and solve and overcome that obstacle. Your calling that you're going to end up doing someday will have a boatload of obstacles. That's part of the deal. Deal with it. Until next time, Fishbowl it's a metaphor for life. Sometimes your life is going smoothly when you're in that fishbowl. Sometimes that fishbowl feels like you're under a microscope, like everybody in the world can see you going through stuff. Sometimes it's choppy. And sometimes you feel like you're drowning. But I remember, I'm sure a lot of you talked about was it the mouse that accidentally jumped into some milk and they were pedaling because they were drowning? They just kept pedaling, staying in the game till they made butter and they lived. Till next time, go challenge yourself. Go scare yourself. You're going to love it.